Joining me now is Steve Bannon's War Room co-host, Natalie Winters. Natalie, great to see you. The big story this week coming out of Washington is Donald Trump's crackdown on crime in the nation's capital, which has cued all the usual leftist outrage. But I found this report of one of the protests somewhat ironic.
Breaking news, if you haven't seen it yet, coming out of Washington, D.C. Two protesters that were screaming and hollering in front of the police station that there was not a crime problem in D.C. and how they didn't need the military there. As they were leaving the protest, they were mugged. That's right. They got mugged by people that they say aren't there to commit crimes.
Sorry, Natalie, you do have to laugh. Now, you live in Washington, D.C. Just how bad is the crime?
Well, look, I'm usually used to you playing videos of crazy transgender activists, but I think what she was saying might be more crazy. And the only thing I would maybe add that I would hope is that the money they were being robbed of is whatever they were probably being paid to protest, because anyone in DC who is up in arms against President Trump trying to make that city safe again, I don't know what they're up to. I don't know what city they live in or what they've experienced. I've lived on and off in DC for years, currently live there now, and there are parts of the city where you go there, it's like a third world country, whether it's from an infrastructure perspective, the people around, the lawlessness, and frankly, I think the worst part is just the inability of the police to do their job and feel like the city has their back because they care more about wokeness and, as we saw, skewing police data to try to fit this utopian narrative, when in reality, the city is in disrepair. Union Station, which used to be one of America's, great landmarks, and I think an architectural really feat. I mean, there's so many tents outside, you can't even walk through there without probably catching a disease. Now those tents have been swapped with Humvees and National Guardsmen, but it really is a sad state of affairs there.
So, Natalie, Donald Trump has said that if he is successful, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on whether he can be successful, but if he is, he's going to implement this sort of crackdown in other Democrat-run cities. Do you think, A, he'll succeed in Washington, D.C., and B, he'd be able to roll it out across those other, New York, San Francisco, L.A., etc.?
Well, definitely, I think you're going to see this expand to other cities. And frankly, in some capacity, the Trump administration, I think, was quite public about how they were deploying, whether it was National Guardsmen or just sort of using the military in unique settings in areas that in the past they weren't necessarily deployed to. So I think you're sort of seeing a blurred line on that front, and certainly no hesitation from the administration to accelerate there. I definitely think they're right to target these large Democrat cities. There seems to be an interesting correlation there. I would say it's probably because they are definitely Democrat-run cities. These policies don't work. In terms of its effectiveness in DC, I think like with a lot of these cities, the violence is not, dispersed equally throughout the city. It's contained to certain areas where I'm just a little curious, where once the presence of this National Guard or these troops or the law enforcement is lifted, if that's going to stay. I think it's a much more systemic problem. But I think the one thing that the data shows is that actually the threat of arrest and actually removing a lot of these people off the streets, which we've seen every night, basically dozens of people, whether it's actual crimes like murder, homicide, that stuff, or on the immigration front, people being removed. But I think that is going to be the biggest deterrent. I don't know what happens once the presence is lifted, but for most people that I've talked to who live in DC, I think they're very much welcoming the upped security presence.
Good to hear. We've spoken a lot about the Jeffrey Epstein saga. There's a new twist, which is that Melania Trump is threatening to sue Hunter Biden. Amazing story, over comments Hunter Biden made where he claimed basically something along the lines that it was Jeffrey Epstein who had introduced Melania to Donald Trump or something like that. But Melania is furious and, with Donald Trump's blessing, is intending to sue for up to $1 billion she's chasing. Tell us the story.
Well, look, she's a killer. And I think probably the years of lawfare that they put her husband through made her have a zero tolerance policy for any defamation, lies, smear campaigns, especially from the media, which, has done nothing but attack her husband, her entire family. Hunter Biden basically tried to say that Epstein was responsible for introducing them, that that was the only reason that they met. Totally unfounded claims, which had been peddled by a bunch of left-wing outlets at the peak of sort of, the Epstein affair. But I think we need to put this in context, right? Melania really has been, I think, destroying the mainstream media. She recently forced the Daily Beast to issue a retraction. She got James Carville to apologize about what he said about her on air. So this is, I think, the three-peat victory forthcoming for her, because Hunter Biden essentially doubled down after she threatened defamation, saying words I can't say on air, but saying, screw it, I'm correct. So I think that'll be a very interesting discovery, and I look forward to seeing where most of his money comes from, because something tells me it's not American.
Well, I think he'll have to sell a lot of those paintings if she wins to pay for it. Natalie Winters, always great to chat to you, and we'll follow that one very, very closely, and we'll speak again soon. Thank you so much.